All right, I think that's good. I think we're good. Let's get started.
All right, let's do it. So, hello everyone. I'm Kelsey Lemon, Senior Technical Marketing Manager here at VMware, and joining me today is my partner in crime,
Sunny Nguyen. I'm Senior Technical Marketing Engineer. Yep.
And we want to welcome you to this session on how to use the Insights API tool in Skyline Advisor Pro and talk about the benefits that it provides. And supporting us today, we have a veritable who's who of Skyline experts. We have product marketing managers Michelle Clompton and Marlene Jinks, as well as our director, Josh Lowry. So they're going to be monitoring our Q&A and answering your questions. So make sure that you're using that Q&A option at the bottom of the screen there. And speaking of Q&A, we've got some questions that we'd like to ask you in order to facilitate today's discussion. And so if we can get that poll started, that would be awesome. All right, so as you can see here, we want to know a couple things just again, so that we can just know you better as an audience, right? We want to know what's your current level of support. You can look at the options there. Obviously we'd like to know if you're currently using Skyline or not. And if you're not, we're going to make a good case why you should be using it today. If you are using Skyline, how many people on your team are leveraging it? Again, if you're using Skyline, what's your favorite feature? I'm hoping today that after the end of this session, the Insights API tool is going to be in your top 5. If you are using Skyline, have you ever acted on any of the proactive findings? Are you currently leveraging vRealize operations, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud? We definitely would like to know what social media tools you're using, so that way we can better engage with you. And then I believe, yeah, that is it. So let's go ahead and just play around with those, and we'll wait and see what the results are. And Marlene and Michelle, you can let me know when those are ready to be reported, and I'll let you guys read the results.
All right. Okay, we're going to give it at least another 30 seconds to wrap up the poll.
Just 30? Why not 40?
40 seconds, 45
Okay.
seconds.
All right.
Let's do it.
Thank you for being flexible. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, go ahead and start wrapping up your final questions. Then we'll end the poll. Okay, so let me go ahead and share the results here. So our results for the first question, what is your current VMware support level? 100% responded production. So a lot of the folks here today have production support. Majority of you are currently using Skyline, 67% of you. 1 to 5 people on your team are using Skyline currently. And out of your favorite features of Skyline, the % answer is log assist.
Not surprised.
Have you acted on any Skyline proactive findings and recommendations? 67% of you said yes. Are you currently using vRealize operations on-prem or vRealize operations cloud? 67% of you also said yes. And then the number one, actually, we got a tie for 3 of the
three-way tie.
yeah. LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram.
Nice.
There you go.
All right. And so with that, here's our agenda for today. Like I said, this session is all about the Insights API tool. So we're going to do a deep dive on it, right? And if you don't know exactly what an API is, that's okay. You may even be thinking that leveraging an API isn't for you. That is too complicated, or that it's not a skill that you need to effectively do your job, right? Well, we're going to help alleviate some of those concerns and address some misconceptions about who the tool is for. And we're going to even show how it can be relevant to you by defining what an API is, outlining its advantages, showing how to access the Insights API tool in Skyline Advisor Pro. And then we're going to end the webinar with some common use cases of how you can actually leverage the tool in your day-to-day work. And so with that, let's just go ahead and begin. So let's just jump right in and just talk about what an API is and what it does, right? And so chances are, obviously, you know what API stands for. It stands for Application Programming Interface. And in a nutshell, right, an API is both a piece of software running on a network server and a component of programming code, right? So the APIs provide a secure and standardized way of for applications to work with each other, and they automate the retrieval and even the updating of information without the need to go into a GUI, a graphical user interface, right? So, for example, your company, you may have a monitoring tool or process that reports potential environment vulnerabilities and even tracks their recommended fixes, right? And it may be your job to manually search and prioritize these potential issues and send that data to a ticketing system, right, like Jira, ServiceNow, or even PagerDuty, so that your entire team can be made aware of what's being remediated. While something like this may not necessarily be an issue with a small environment that may have a dozen or so items that you may have to manually enter, but think about the productivity sink, right? If you have to do that for a few hundred of them on a full-blown production environment that is operating at full scale. So with an API, you can actually eliminate the manual intervention on your part and send that data directly to those systems that you're integrating with. And with that, that's when the advantages of the API start to become clear. So let's go ahead and talk about that, right? And so as you can imagine, right, APIs can definitely help increase productivity. The scenario that I just described, could be developed as an application, but if that data is already exposed as an API, you wouldn't have to build a new tool from the ground up, so thereby, you're saving valuable development time and you're actually enabling your company to realize its business goal faster. And speaking of the productivity benefits, right, that the API provides by helping automate common tasks, there's a monetary component to that as well. Basically APIs can save you money. And since APIs significantly reduce development effort, using them to create a application is really effective in reducing costs, right? So with APIs, right, developers can fetch most of the data that they need to integrate with other applications without the need from starting from scratch, right? And according to a recent survey, developing an app, right, once you've factored in the time of prototyping, going into beta, and ultimately delivering and maintaining that app, that can range anywhere from $20K to $140,000. And then last but not least, right, APIs and the automation that they provide can actually improve connectivity, collaboration, and even communication within a whole enterprise. And since API's core functionality in a nutshell is connectivity, they enable different systems and applications and even platforms to connect and share data with one another, and they can perform all these different types of tasks. Did you know that according to a recent survey that an average company runs 464 custom applications? And without APIs, right, all these tools and the benefits that they provide, it would all be siloed, which definitely would reduce that impact on your business's bottom lines. And then basically, when you sum it all up, right, the net of all these advantages is that the APIs, right, and all the automation that they provide drives innovation. Through APIs, businesses can introduce cutting edge technologies with fewer resources. They can adapt to requirements faster, like meeting SLAs, and even introduce new ways to grow your business. And now with all that being said, we're going to bring it all home, right? And we're going to sort of connect the dots, if you will, by talking about how APIs and automations in the context of Skyline Advisor Pro can help you in your business. So customers like you have said, right, you want to do more than just view, the Skyline's findings, data, and recommendations. They want something that's going to allow them to take action on those findings and recommendations. And so we provided this ability with our Insights API. And with it, right, you can take Skyline finding data and you can extract it via an API into the tooling of your choice to really automate whatever you want. So for example, if you want to create a ticket out of a finding, not a problem. If you want to use some configuration automation tools, you can go ahead and code away. If you want to send all of your findings to Slack, done. Sunny is going to be showing all of this a little bit later. But the key thing here, right, is that with the Insights API, Skyline can connect teams. So whether you're a sysadmin or SRE or an IT manager, the Insights API can enable you to all work together. It can be used to automate some common workflows and give everyone on your team that very valuable time back to do meaningful work. And so with that, let's walk through the process of how you can access the Insights API in Skyline Advisor Pro. So to activate the Insights API feature in Skyline Advisor Pro, you need to do two things. You need to generate an API token and generate an access token. And in order to generate an API token, you must satisfy the requirements of being a member of a Skyline organization with the API user service role enabled. And you can verify this by going into your account and checking your service roles. And once you verify that you have the API user service role enabled, you can generate an API token. And it's a pretty straightforward process. Simply give the token a name. You can accept the default 6 months as the token expiration date. And then finally, you can associate that token with the developer role in your organization. And then once that API token is generated, just make sure that you save it because it's only generated once. And if you lose it, you're going to have to generate another one. And now with the API token in place, you can generate the access token, which is what you're going to need to retrieve findings data in Skyline for integration into the other tools that you're leveraging. Access tokens can be generated using curl or Power CLI. And I'm going to use curl for this example. So let's take a look at the syntax here, right? This curl command is hitting the console server. And notice that the syntax that says your access token, you're going to need to replace that with the API token code that was generated and saved earlier. And when you run the curl command, you're going to get a larger token, which is an alphanumeric code. And this in and of itself is actually the access token that you're going to need. Now let's go back to Skyline Advisor Pro so that you can use that access token to retrieve findings data in the GraphQL user interface. And to do this, you're going to click on that API Explorer. And if you try to extract findings without entering the access token, you're going to get an error. So let's enter the access token by adding an authorization request header where the bearer is the access token key. Simply paste it into the code. And with the access token in place, you can run GraphQL to start pulling your findings data. And you can also extract findings data directly from the command line using either curl or Power CLI. I'm going to use curl again so that we can look at the syntax. You're going to need to set your API token to equal that alphanumeric API token that you generated and saved earlier. You're going to set Skyline access to the console that will get you your access token. And then you're going to set Skyline API to the location, which is where you're going to get your API data. And the rest of the syntax are the curl commands to generate your active findings, right? So where you can specify the number of findings, the finding ID, supporting KBs, recommendations, the level of severity, affected objects. There's a lot that you can do here and so forth. So you can do a lot with this in terms of customizing exactly what you want. And when you run the command, you're going to see that what you get from the command line interface is exactly what you get from within the GraphQL. So let's just go ahead and run that here. Now with that, let's take a look at how Skyline Advisor Pro's Insights API can help your business do those things, right? Increase the productivity, save you money, and connect teams. So like I said, right, API and automation can definitely help manage your environments at scale and save you a lot of time. Often Skyline will provide a recommendation that can address potential issues that can impact as many as 30 objects at once. And trying to address them individually wouldn't be as productive, right? This definitely wouldn't be a productive use of your time. And here's a very interesting statistic that I want to share with you all. 60% of availability and performance errors are caused by misconfigurations. Automation through scripting could reduce that number significantly. So let's take a look at this critical NTP issue, and if this issue isn't addressed, the stability of the environment can be compromised. And luckily there's a fix for this, right? There's a KB article that describes exactly what you need to do in order to self-remediate without opening an SR at VMware. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export these findings to a CSV file, as it's going to play a major role later. But what I want you to do is make note of the vCenter name, the 6 ESXi hosts, and the KB number. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log into the vSphere client, and I can see the vCenters and the 6 ESXi hosts where Skyline has detected the potential issues. And as you can see here, NTP isn't configured properly. I've copied over the CSV file that I exported from Skyline so that it resides locally. You know, this machine only has Notepad installed, and while the file looks different, the data is exactly the same. And now the fun part, right? You know, here's the script that I'm going to use. And as you can see, it's just a few lines of code. You know, basically the script has a set of variables for the vCenter name, the ESXi host, and the KB article that it will pull from that CSV file that I exported earlier. And then it's going to assign an IP address to the NTP service, start the service, and set the time. And since this CSV file has 6 objects, it's going to do this 6 times. 1 script, 6 remediations, right? And that's a huge productivity boost. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Sunny, where he's going to show how the Insights API can save you money and connect your teams.
Excellent.
Sunny, my friend, take it away.
All right, so let me do this. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So, oops. Okay, so what we're talking about here is so already Kelsey has mentioned, you know, hey, there is an API, you can actually get your finding, and that's good, right? So at least that takes a few steps away. Now, the next step, of course, is how does it save you money? At the end of the day, the question comes down to, and Kelsey kind of alluded to this as well, is how is it saving you time and money, right? Because if you're going to have to manually do this for 10 machines, 20 machines, 100 machines, yeah, that's going to be a long time. And the other concern, of course, is inconsistency. So you might be able to do it one way and then did it another way. Then you come to realize, you know, you've got a configuration drift, and then you once again, you lose time to fix the problem. Once again, time is money. Okay, so let's talk about this. Well, let me show you a few examples. All right. So as you can see, one of the options is let's say, for example, for here, it's a snapshot scenario, right? So I've got a machine that has a snapshot, or at least has multiple snapshots. It could be that you've got multiple environments that has a lot of snapshots. All right. So if we were to take a quick look, right? As you can see, right? So imagine, right? You've got a finding that has all of these machines with so many snapshots. Can you imagine how long it takes for you and your team to do that? Even if you hand it off to the operations team. So here's a command. And the goal here, of course, is to make things simple for everyone. So that way it's only a few lines of code. But if you can see what's going on, see what we're doing, I'm hoping that even if you're not comfortable of running the code, you're not comfortable of writing code, you can still see how it is and how you can run it. All right. So here it is. I'm saying, hey, run this command. Here's a CSV that has all the information. So what happens after that is if you take a look down at the bottom where it says recent tasks, as soon as I press enter, it just removed it. As I said earlier, this is just for one machine, but imagine if you've got hundreds and thousands of machines in your environment, you know? So once again, that's saving time and money. All right. So let's take a look at something else. Here, I'm going to show you how to patch an ESX server. Now, I understand that, you know, some folks, you've got a regimen, a scenario where you have to put change requests and you have to do all that. For this scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to highlight the bunches of ESXs that I want to patch. The goal, of course, is to create a baseline out of it, tie it to the machine, and run a scan. Once again, all this is all configuration based. So it's not making any change whatsoever. However, if you're going to do this by hand, that's going to take you 10 minutes per machine, possibly even more, right? But this, it does it all for you. And then the next question comes down to is, you know, when do you want to patch it? So as you can see, very small amount of line of code, but the common theme is, of course, is create the baseline, tie to the machine, tie the patch to the baseline, and then run a scan. Okay. Keep in mind, all of this we will share with you from our from our blog post. Not only this, but also the subsequent components as well. All right. And if you are intrigued, but you know, you're a little bit shy, reach out to Kelsey and myself. We'll provide you with more examples on how to make your job better. Right. So as you can see right now, I'm just going to run the fixer, right? And this fixer now, I'm just going to point to the same CSV. Once again, I make it simple. I make it so that way it tell me the CSV, I will find out what's going on, and then I will do the work. So as you can see, it already scanned the environment. So if you were to go back to baseline, you're going to see that's the baseline. See it? That's the patch level, right? Click on it, and then you're going to see that, you know, hey, it's tied to that particular patch that your update manager has already pulled down anyway. So you have to insert anything that new, right? And then, of course, last but not least, if we were to take a quick look on the ESX servers that we're talking about, you're going to see, scroll down a little bit, and there you have it. It's tied to that machine. Once again, we haven't technically patched anything, right? We just set the stage so that way you and your team can patch at your interval. All right. Now, this next one is a bit extreme. So this is just an example to show that it could be done. All right. Not to recommend this is the be all and all. Okay. So let's take a quick look, shall we? So that's the CSV file, right, of the vCenter that we want to patch, right? Now, if we were, here's the command to do it. Now, if you're comfortable with plink, there's nothing new, right? So at the end of the day, it's still, you know, connecting to that vCenter use SSH, and here are the two commands to install. All right. What this doesn't mention is that I downloaded the ISO, the particular patch that I want, and then I mapped it to the the vCenter server. So all it does now is that it stages the environment and does the actual install. It could be that, you know, you're more comfortable of staging the environment, put a change request in, and then do the manual update yourself. But at least this will solve some of your delays. Let's take a look. As you can see, it already mounted and scanned and staged the ISO, and now is doing the install. Take a look on the side, right? So you're seeing 6, 7, 10,000, right? As you can see, it just plopped over to 50,000. It did the exact patch that I want. The vCenter will come back up, as you can see from the background. The GUI went offline because of the patch, and now it's restarting service, and then you'll get to the latest and greatest. Once again, this is extreme. I don't expect you guys to do this, but I just want to show you an example of it could be done. Now, connecting to Teams, right? So we've mentioned, hey, you've got the default Insights API that will get you all the findings. I just showed you some examples. Kelsey did the same thing, show you some examples of how to fix some of your problem. In reality, a lot of what you and your team do is all about communications, right? So there's a bunch of patches, there are a bunch of fixes. You gotta stage it, you gotta put it somewhere, right? You've heard Kelsey mention earlier about Slack. You've heard Kelsey mention about, you know, PagerDuty, ServiceNow. Ultimately, you lose a lot of time, you know, putting it into places manually. So the goal here is to show you how easy it is to put it into other locations. So like, for example, this is Slack, right? So let me pause this for a minute. I just want to show you a few code, right? So what you're going to see here is, let's see, this section. So that's the channel. So that's the channel I'm using for this particular scenario, right? I've got my own token. You will have your own, right? Here are the finding examples that I'm trying to show, right? So one of them is finding ID, vCenter, ESX, KV. And all I'm doing is actually just putting it all together. This is the body that you need for your REST API into Slack, right? So you invoke REST, send it to this generic site because it's having your token and your credential. You throw in the body, and sure enough, I'll show you in 1 second. Let me see. Here. All right. So as you can see, I've got 3 findings as the example. So what I'm going to do, if you take a look over here, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna make sure that there's a space in between so we can see the difference, right? So you see what it says start demo? I'm gonna enter that a few times just to get it, the screen out of the way, all right? So you know that I just manually did that one. Now here's the code that I just showed you to send it to Slack. This is just an example of sending, one finding. You could easily send 5 findings, the 5 that, you and your team wanna work on. So by doing that, what you do is from here, you and your team can actually comment within here saying, oh, I got it. I'll fix that problem. Oh, can you look at this? Can you do that? And then at least from there is your interactions with your coworkers so much easier, right? Could you have done this manually? Yes. But can you imagine if this is done automatically every week? All right. So let me show you Jira. All right. So as you can see, same scenario, right? You get the finding source, host ID, KV. I tend to make it as simple as possible. There's a lot more variables within the APIs, but I feel that these are the most important pieces, right? And as you can see, here's the Jira information, right? So you got Jira, and this is my server. Yours would differ, right? But the /REST API latest issue are always the same. And here's my data, my /body. Once again, it may seem daunting when you first look at this, but in reality, it's really not that hard. And the hope is that if I can show you that within one line of code right here, that you can actually send your findings into Jira to create a ticket, I'm hoping that it opens the door for you to try other things. Right? So if we were to let this run, oops. Okay. So there, it's hitting into Jira right now. As you can see, there is my ID, right? That's the response back from the ticket name. So if we were to take a look now, we're gonna find there's the ticket name, right? And inside the description has all the details that I need. Now you could add a lot more to this, but the point is just to show you that it could be done. All right. So now let's take a look at PagerDuty. Right? This is actually hilarious because as soon as you create a ticket in PagerDuty, as you know, running PagerDuty, they start calling you like crazy, right? So let me show you my code. And once again, very simple. You got the 4 variables, right? And then the curl command. This is a bit longer just because the actual body is it's a little bit more complex. And it wants a specific way. That's the reason why you see it in this format. But at the end of the day, I use my account, right? I use my token, and then here are the variables that I care about, right? So the incident, the title, and the description I keep as the same. The service ID, I need that. Yours is going to be different. And then the locations where you send the incident to. Once again, this is very generic. It's API, pagerduty.com, incidents. And then what it does is it leverages your token to create the spot, or at least the ticket in your area. So let's take a look, shall we? So now if we look, there you have it. It's been triggered and it's calling my phone like crazy right now. So I acknowledged it, right? But if you take a look inside, it's the same data that you've seen in Slack. It's the same data that you've seen in Jira. So what you're seeing here is I'm just showing you examples of how to sending your data over to PagerDuty. So as you can see, right? Everything that Kelsey has shown you, everything that I've shown you, you could take the finding based on the Insights API that is already given within Skyline. And then with very little amount of code that I'm not asking you to build from scratch. Use my example. Just change the attributes that you need for you, right? And it should land in your space. Once again, the hope is that, it makes it easier for you to get a lot more work done. Okay? So you've heard already, the goal, of course, is to increase productivity. We know you only have X amount of time and there's still a lot of work to do. The last thing we want to see is you manually, get your finding, manually do the fix, manually do all that stuff. While it's doable, and we've been doing this for 10, 20 years, there could be things that could be done faster, right? If you set the automations within Skyline Insight, right? If you set the automations within the fixes, if you set the automations to talk to your teams, I mean, the whole goal, of course, is to eliminate amount of time you waste by doing everything manually, right? And we know that, for everything you do, you have to connect to other teams, because I've shown you examples of, updating ESX, updating VMs, but in reality, Skyline also does recommendations on, your NSX environment, your storage environments. So you're going to work with other teams. Might as well leverage the automation here as the examples to make it easier for you all to work together, right? So earlier on, Kelsey mentioned, hey, this is driving innovation. It is. But the thing is, it not only drives innovation for you and your company, it drives innovation for you, right? So in the past, so prior to being, part of VMware, I was a VMware admin like you, right? And I have to, work on environments. Initially, all I did was operations. I then went to architecture, right? And then I started coding a lot of the stuff. So imagine when I was showing my management that, the amount of time it takes for me to deploy environment in work versus the amount of time I automate and got things done and went to the next project. This itself should provide you as as a skill set, something more valuable than if you were to continue the way you planned initially. So all I'm asking is take a look at some of our examples, see if you can make it work. And I think it's just provides you with more tools to your arsenal. All right. So what I'm asking of you is if you've got Skyline up and running, try some of the stuff we've shown you. If you haven't, download it, install it. At minimum, even if you manually do the fixes and everything, you're gonna find flaws within your environment. It is what it is, right? But you can find it, you can fix it and look like a hero for your company, right? If you need more information, just go to the more information. If you have concerns, if your management has concern, if your security folks have concern, the FAQ not only tells a lot about what Skyline does, but what Skyline protects from, okay? We have a vast community within Skyline for all these activities. And Kelsey and myself, we actually interact within that community as well to actually provide more insight, okay? What's recently been added, and Kelsey did a lot of work in this space, is if you go to VMware Code, you're gonna find that Skyline Insights API is all linked up to all of our documentation, okay? What that does is it should be able to spearhead you to learn and start leveraging the Insights API right off the bat. Not only that, I would recommend that you go check out the blogs at vmware.com/kb, because that's where Kelsey and I write a lot of the examples that you've seen today, right? So from the Jira service, PagerDuty, Slack, there's also going to be more stuff like for example, ServiceNow is going to be part of that. And I'll also do more examples of how to leverage the Insights API better. And that's all. I mean, I know that we went through a lot, but we feel that they're pretty valuable for you, right, and your team. So I'm hoping that you took away something out of this. Kelsey?
That was awesome. One of the things that I'd noticed that as we were walking through those examples, CSV export, it's critical. You know what I mean? That feature's been there since the beginning, right? And now we're starting to leverage that even more with the API. And so I just heard recently that the CSV export is a very, very valuable feature, and I can see why, because it's very, very critical to leveraging the API and a lot of the automation that Sunny just provided. So if you're not using CSV export, start doing it.
So did we get any questions?
I think we're good. We've been sort of knocking them down as they've come up. So
Yeah,
Michelle and Marlene, if we're...
Yeah, I think you guys did a good job answering all the questions.
Very good. Well, with that, Sonny, thank you for being along for this journey, man. Awesome presentation. Looking forward to getting more of this content out for the masses. And so thank you for everyone for attending, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you all.